Hello, everyone. This is Burgundy. Welcome to another episode of Yoga Talks. In this episode, we are discussing Saucha, which is the first of the Niyamas. We've spent the past several weeks going through the yamas. So as a review, we're following along the book called The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. The yamas are disciplines for restraint, things that you are trying to avoid. For example, violence. We are trying to practice nonviolence, ahimsa. Practicing avoiding attachment, so we're practicing non-attachment. In the last one that we did, aparigraha. So this time now we are going through Niyamas. We'll see how many weeks it takes us to get through the 5. If there's anything that's particularly interesting or creates further discussion, we'll add on extra days for that. So the Niyamas are observances, things that you specifically do practice versus avoid. So the first one that we're going through again is called Saucha. This is purity, where you're purifying your body, your mind, your spirit. And as we go through this discussion and as you read the chapter, you can definitely see how, again, even this thing where you're practicing physical cleansing, colon cleanses, brushing your teeth, using a neti pot, for example, you can see how these can still interweave with the yamas, which are more ethical practices and concepts that you are practicing versus this. So anyway, we had a really great discussion about Saucha last night. So this is a recording from Wednesday, March 21st. Yoga Talks happens every Wednesday from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Yoga Happiness Studio here in Columbus, Ohio. If you're ever in town, if you're ever in the neighborhood, please stop by. We love to have fresh minds, new people coming in to discuss this with us. And if you haven't read the book, no worries. You can still be part of the conversation, although I do have spare copies of the book if people want to borrow. So here it is. We are discussing Saucha. Enjoy. So we're finally on the first niyama, first of the niyamas. Saucha is purity. The sort of a quick description or definition of purity or of Saucha. So on page 105 of the book, she does a sort of dual breakdown. First, it invites us to purify our bodies, our thoughts, and our words. And then second, this guideline has a relational quality. But the paragraph that I really like specifically is on page 106. These two practices of purity are interrelated, meaning the two practices of purifying body, thoughts, and words, and then the relational aspect. These two practices of purity are interrelated. As we purify ourselves from the heaviness and clutter of toxins, distractions, and scatteredness, we gain clarity to meet each moment with integrity and freshness. We become more pure in our relationship with each moment. So I like that paragraph as a good description of the dual aspect of Saucha. So with that, do either of you have any initial thoughts on Saucha?
I came at this thinking originally it was going to be purity as in like chastity, but that kind of purity, and I was a little skeptical of it because it seems kind of subjective in a way. I don't know exactly, I didn't articulate that well, but I liked how she kind of explains it, just the general idea of kind of accepting who you are and accepting the moment and things, and like that as the idea of purity.
Yeah.
Just kind of that general idea. That was interesting.
And you can see how that aspect of purity and accepting the moment is very similar to some of the aspects that we saw in the yamas, like non-attachment and so forth. Just be present, be in the moment is similar to this concept as well.
Yeah, I think it's just the term purity has such baggage with it. So maybe that's why
we talked about God forever the other day. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I kind of had a little the same kind of thing before I started reading this. I'm like, okay, what's this going to be about?
Right.
But for me, it almost seems like it's maybe a better word, at least for me, would be authenticity. I agree. Coming through every moment from an authentic perspective. Okay, that seemed to be like an underlying thing that she was saying. So come at it, and just be real, basically, for every moment. So that's kind of, and then there was this like one phrase that just kind of at least summed it up for me. I was just like, oh, read that, I'll just drop the book on time. Mic drop. Purity is not our attempt to make something. This is at the bottom of 109. Is not our attempt to make something different than it is, but rather to be pure in our relationship with it, as it is in the moment. So
yeah.
That sums it up.
It's not like making ourselves pure. It's almost like making our relationship with everything
now,
pure. Like
now here's the problem that I have though, because all the thing that she sort of glosses over is the aspect, in fact, where you're talking about cleansing and purifying your body.
Yeah, the physical stuff. Yeah,
yes.
I thought that was, she was really weak on that.
She really, yes. So that's what I want to talk about, because she didn't hit on it. So traditionally, there's an aspect of Saucha that we call the kriyas. The kriyas are cleansing, purifying things. And so, for example, when you gaze at a candle, that is said to help literally cleanse your eyes, cleanse your sight. It's a similar concept as when you're sitting looking at a computer for hours and hours, and your eye doctor, at least mine, tells me to gaze off, far away, look at a tree, whatever, something like that, so that it actually truly releases, lets your eyes go. So there's that aspect. One thing that she brought up that is so there's an interesting story as far as one of the kriyas. It talks about how you take this red cotton cloth, and you take it through your sinuses. Well, not through your sinuses. I'm sorry, through your guts into your body, all the way down, and then you pull it out, and it cleanses by pulling it back out again.
You physically do that.
So physically, I have no idea how it's supposed to work. However, there's an old story about so thousands of years ago, hundreds.
I think it was I think too.
Yeah, appalling, and that's why she makes the comment.
No way, not in my lifetime.
Correct. Yes. So that's the one. And so the story about this goes that the cloth is red. Historically, yogis were seen as demons, as witches, wizards, people to avoid, sort of like the stories that at least I grew up hearing about were like gypsies coming to steal your children, that kind of a thing. Because the stories were told about the yogis that they would turn themselves inside out. And that comes from the red cloth. They thought they were literally taking their intestines out, where in fact it was the cloth that was going in to soak everything up. And so essentially what they were doing is they did, I guess, like a colon cleanse from the opposite direction. Whereas, colon cleanse as we know it now, you go out from the bottom, whereas this, you get it to go in there, and then you're pulling it out from the top. Say what you want about it, however, so that's one of the kriyas. Some of the other kriyas, and I've mentioned some of these in class before. So scraping your tongue with like a wooden stick or something like that. There's things specifically for that. The idea of brushing your teeth, that's a kriya. The neti pot, where you're rinsing through your sinuses with salt water. And that's actually recommended by doctors as well. So if you have sinus issues, if you've got allergies, especially when allergy season comes around, twice a day with the neti pot can help keep the allergens and the pollen, keep it out of your sinuses. It really helps, honestly. There are a lot of, so one of the other kind of kriyas is, and unfortunately for an audio recording, so where I'm not good at it, where you're undulating your belly to actually do the movement. So you're, it's toning your organs and helping to cleanse and work your internal organs, very similar to what we do in the beginning of my class. Yeah, so it's very similar to this. However, I have seen videos of yogis who are able to ripple their muscles from left to right, as well as up and down. So you can get very specific, very skilled with that. So what she doesn't touch on in here is that a very large part of Saucha is the physical cleansing of your body from all aspects. There's also the dry loofah thing where you're giving yourself a dry bath, where you're scraping off the dead skin cells. I know I'm missing a couple things here. But anyway, so those are a lot of the things where you are cleansing your body.
What about like dietary stuff and fasting and that kind of thing?
Yes.
That
yes, absolutely.
She does mention that, like, one of the, notice your body is this week is sluggish. One of the questions at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it did.
Yeah, and so so some of this you can see from the aspect of excess. So you're getting rid of excess, like getting rid of excess skin cells. You're getting rid of excess, junk in your mouth and gunk in your organs or whatever. But then also the sort of, excess, allowing your body to digest. Fasting is said to be very healthy for your body. Pick a Sunday every so often, and that's your juice day or something like that, to allow your organs to take a break. So that is a big aspect of it. I think one part that is that's very poignant, at least for me, on page 107, the very bottom, where she's talking about lightening your load. So it's right under the part where she's talking about fasting, but other forms of purifying are lightening your load from not only toxins in your diet, but also releasing baggage of victimhood or not forgiven somebody yet. So these more emotional weights that you might carry, emotional baggage. And I think that we talked about this, something similar to this before, where I brought up the concept of spring cleaning of friends or people who you need to sort of do an honest assessment and say, this is not a healthy relationship. This friendship isn't healthy. Some friends that you just, they're not good for you. They're not leading you in the right direction. They're not boosting you up and supporting you in the way that you deserve or that you should. So even thinking about people in your life that are baggage, and why, thinking of how relationships should be reciprocated in some way. Not everybody can give and take equally necessarily, but looking at friendships that, it should be a two-way street. You shouldn't be the only one giving. And being able to forgive, whether or not you're actually saying that to the person, or you're just saying it within yourself that I am going to let go of this anger or whatever the feeling is that you have about a certain situation. My personal one is with my own father, and I made peace with that a long time ago, never to his face. My dad died several years ago, and before he died, I hadn't spoken to him for probably 15 or 20 years. And so I made peace with that. Although I made a choice to not have him in my life or talk to him, I still made peace, and I was not carrying around any of the anger. I just chose to not have him in my life because he was a bad person. So that kind of a thing, thinking, do you carry around some heavy feeling, heavy burden?
I mean, I always do because I'm an emotional person. But that was one thing kind of going through my most recent breakup was I actually ended up reaching out to like a lot of my other exes, and by a lot of them, like almost all of them, kind of just to, like touch base or just to talk, or like there was a couple that we left on kind of bad terms. Not terrible, but it was nice to just kind of, burden myself in that way a little bit. But then I had this whole thing just from last Friday where you weren't here, but I had a friend of mine who I considered a friend, said he was dating my ex, like the most recent one that we just broke up like a couple months ago, and the timeline that he gave me was like he basically started at least pursuing her almost immediately, and I had already had suspicions about him before, for reasons. And so I've actually now just the past like several days, like really just since he's told me, I've been like more angry for like this period of time than I ever have been, and I kind of like don't know what to do with myself because my anger is usually very fleeting, or it's either minor, or it's like I get really mad at the car in front of me, and then by the time it turns, I'm away from it. And so I don't know. I just feel very betrayed, and it's hard to, so reading this, it was hard because I remember thinking that like, the forgiveness part's still just hard for me on that because, he said he's sorry, but he did it with like a very like conscious effort to not care about my feelings. And then she and I were trying to be friends, and just the way she said some things, she kind of made me feel bad about myself. When it turned out that she was at least lying by admission that she was seeing him. So, I don't know. It'll be something to work on in the future.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's rough. It's definitely okay to be angry, right? And be upset about it.
right.
Oh
yeah. But
I
guess.
sorry.
I guess just one more thing that I've been dealing with is we have a lot of mutual friends, at least me and him. Mm-hmm. And so I haven't told any of them because I don't want to come across as petty or something like that. I don't want to burden other people or make them, have to choose sides or something like that. But at the same time, it's going to come up, and so I've been struggling with how to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And maybe something through this book will help me with that. I didn't find this chapter particularly helpful for that situation. Yeah. Not at this time. It's still very fresh. It's been less than a week.
I'm interested, you talked about your father and forgiving it. And I come from a Christian background, I guess, and I continue to practice as a Christian, and that's a very fundamental concept in Christianity, obviously, is this idea of forgiveness, and I just, because it's been my experience that, you can forgive somebody, but it's not like a one-time thing. It's not like I did the forgiveness and, I moved on. It's like you do your forgiveness and then, something will trigger you and make you upset again or sad or whatever, and you kind of have to, work through it again. Re-forgive, and hopefully over time it's not as, right after the event or the situation, where it's it's harder to do, and you just go with it, you know, because I mean, you know, going through a split with my wife of like 22 years, and I felt very betrayed. Okay, she was working on her PhD for the last 5 years. You know, everybody in the family kind of, you know, really sacrificed various things for her to be able to do this. Okay, and she was gone quite a bit because she was doing stuff abroad, and so it left a lot of stress on the family. Now we were able to deal with it and you know, work through it and all that kind of stuff, but it was always kind of, you know, at least I had in my mind, there was the light at the end of the tunnel. She'll have her PhD, and then things will kind of like normalize or whatever. Okay, and then just, you know, out of the blue, it's just like, look, I'm not coming back, and this is it, and see you later, kind of thing. You know, and so I was just like, well, okay, not only was it you know, shocking just from the loss of the relationship and that kind of stuff, but just like well, you know, we all just like, we did the sacrifice, and now it's just like, you know, so it's been very kind of difficult to, I mean, I've shared a lot about that before, but it's just like so much, because I mean, I still have a minor age son, okay, that she's not involved with his life on a daily basis, you know, which is really hurtful to me and upsetting and that kind of stuff. So, you know, I mean, in the end, I don't want to be with somebody who doesn't want to be with me, and doesn't want to, you know, is not in love with me and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's you know, so it's not like I want to, you know, you have to be with me kind of thing, whatever, but it's still just, you know, processing this has just been like, you know, and I want to, you know, I've been able to forgive like certain parts and stuff like that, but I still have to revisit, and there's certain things I've just said, you know what, I can't deal with that right now, okay, and I just have to like put it on a shelf, and I'll come back to it some other day, you know, maybe work on it, but I can't like dwell on it, because I'll just be miserable, whatever, and so I've just got to like, you know, move on, I guess. It's but yeah.
And
I don't know if that was helpful.
Are you? Well, I mean, what was helpful is that kind of put it a little more like with what Berg said was like you essentially forgave your father or unburdened yourself with it,
yeah.
but chose to not have him in your life. So yes. Like maybe there's a point where I can choose to forgive my ex and my friend, but not have them be in my life, not have him be a friend anymore, because he, you know, did betray me. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I think because in reading through the book and having my own personal experiences of having been cheated on, mm-hmm. that kind of betrayal, you know, my father, other family members. So I've experienced a lot of those kind of things, and the one thing that comes into my mind, and then I sort of resolve it quickly, is it's nice and all for you to tell me to forgive. But just as you said, like, it's okay to be angry. However, you don't want to find those emotions that build up and hurt you more.
Right.
You know?
Become toxic, you know.
Correct. Exactly. So you have to find some form of resolve that allows you to still feel like you've done something about the situation. I'm not going to roll over and let people continue to cheat on me and treat me like shit and whatever. Like, that's not going to happen. So I will say what needs to be said. Potentially let somebody know that this is how I feel about the situation. You hurt me, whatever, and then say, this is what's going to happen. We're done, or whatever the answer is. And truly, yes, continue to forgive and forgive and forgive, to remind myself and not continue to remember. So, for example, like with my father, like not continue to remember the pain and the things that happened and so on and so forth, because continuing to remember that is hard. and painful, and not part of my healing process. However, this is my own personal thing. I do not believe in forgive and forget. Because if I forget, then it's going to happen again. Okay? However, I'm not going to keep remembering in order to completely terrorize myself. I'm not gonna run that movie over and over again about everything that happened. But it's gonna sit there. I'm gonna put that on, just as you said, like on a shelf. It's on a shelf back here, so that I just know, like, this thing happened. I'm not gonna let it happen again. It's like I'm not gonna let history repeat itself. You know.
Exactly.
So, but
I hate that phrase, forgive.
Yeah, it's just no.
Yeah, you can only do that for like small petty things. I don't know. I don't know, but I agree too. I like physically or like mentally don't have the ability to like forget some of the things.
Would you tell somebody who was suffering through the Holocaust, just forget and forget? You know, no, of course not.
Right.
It's like, no, I mean,
it just
apartheid or whatever. You know, it's like, no, I mean, it's not helpful or healthy either. I mean, again, you don't have to. It's not good for you to dwell on it, or where it consumes you, and you're just like it becomes toxic to your being or whatever. But it's acknowledging, okay, this happened to me. This is a part of my experience now, but how can I learn from it and grow from it and make sure it doesn't happen again, or not put myself in that situation or whatever. In case or not put myself with people that would do something like that, and do the best you can. So.
Yeah, and I think that one thing that goes along with the purity for me, especially when we're talking about this sort of like emotional stuff, is the parigraha, the non-attachment. You know, like, I don't want the thing to own me. I don't want that anger or that resentment or whatever it is. I don't want it to own me. I can feel it for a second and then put it off. And then that's it. But it's not gonna now be a part of who I am. I refuse to let that happen, because then that gives the power to the person who did that to me. Like, not only did I do that first thing, but now you've got that little thing in you, and that's going to keep happening to you. So I refuse to let that happen. And so, so being able to, as far as like the relational thing, I think then, you know, whether or not you're talking about the person who betrayed you or whatever. So let's move on to maybe a more healthy relationship where there hasn't been betrayal, for example. And being able to be with a person, friend, romantic relationship, or whatever, and be able to just accept that person for who they are and be with just the pure version of who that person is without trying to change them, trying to mold them into who you want them to be. And then also the flip side of that is finding the pure version of yourself and not trying to mold yourself to be for somebody else, which I think can be challenging, because I do think that we change a little bit. We tweak the way that we talk, how we present ourselves for each person, perhaps.
We want to be, we're social. We want to be accepted in the group and all that kind of stuff. So
yes,
but yeah, still it's that getting back to that authenticity.
Yes.
And staying true to your core self.
Yeah. And I think then to even go a little bit deeper into staying true to your core self, though, is. So I'm just thinking about like the different stages of my life. I remember several very important stages in my life where I had to sit there and think about, well, what is the core? Who is my core self? And having to reevaluate, redefine, clean out some things that are no longer beliefs that I actually have. Reevaluate, what are the things that I do believe in? What are my primary beliefs, the things that I think are fundamental and core to who I am. Make sure I'm copacetic with all those things, and get rid of the rest. And that probably is something that I need to do regularly. Every so often, circle back around. All right, who's Berg now? Because I know I'm always changing. I am a very changing person. I regularly stay the same.
So I've got all these books now.
You have a lot of yoga books now.
And so I've been like, it's been great. I've been like a little sense of overwhelmed because there's so much of it. But I read, I like this, and then I start reading another, I like this. But there was I forget which book it was from. Maybe it's a guy Stephen Cope, I think, book, and he said something in terms of what yoga is about, and about it's not a practice of attainment. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a practice of self-transformation and growth. And I was like, really like that kind of, and that I think, why I brought that up is because you were talking about who am I today, and that's constantly changing, and constantly you're reevaluating who you are. And it's not to say that who you were before was not valid and good or whatever, but that conditions change, you change, and so to embrace that and do those things that allow you to reevaluate on a periodic basis who you are and all that kind of stuff. So.
And I think it's a good point, the idea that yoga isn't about attainment, because so many times, so many people, even myself, the other than perhaps chaturanga that you can do wrong, the question of, well, what should I be doing? Well, I'm not perfect at yoga. Well, I don't do yoga well. Well, okay, but those aren't the right words, because that's not the intention.
Well, it's not like you're doing chaturanga wrong. It's more like you're doing it like dangerously,
yes,
or something like
correct,
that.
Yes,
yeah.
there are several poses in
yeah.
yoga that because they can be dangerous, like certain inversions and things like that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's very different to me.
Yeah, and that's why I say like there are shoulds in anatomy and shouldn'ts, but other than that, like there is no perfection in yoga and all of these things, in all these aspects.
Well, that's something that I've said it a lot lately, and I probably said it in here, but like I try to not say shoulds too much, and that's something I shouldn't do as much. No, it's something I really struggle with, and then just being like accepting of my own emotions, and oh man, I had a point. It's still a good point, but I had more for that, but I
well, and I think as far as like the shoulds, even talking to other people, saying like, well, I think you should do this. Oh, do you now? That's nice. Yeah, like it's shoulds are, whoever invented that word should be shot.
Hard to not use it sometimes, but
yeah, but it's hard because I think it's so part of our language.
I guess what I was getting at was something with like for me, like with my anger, like I shouldn't lash out like violently at somebody, but I shouldn't not feel anger. Like it's appropriate to feel whatever emotion you're feeling. I try not to like ever judge anybody on a specific emotion.
Right.
Now on how they project that emotion is a different question, but I'm validated in feeling anger. And talking with some people like my therapist and some friends, they were basically saying like, I think it's okay to tell people like about that anger. Like it's okay that you're upset about it. It's okay if you tell like your mutual friends and stuff. You don't need to say it in a way that fuck that. Oh, I don't know if it's children proof or whatever. Anyway,
filters all that out.
Yeah, you just bleep it all out. So, but I don't need to say that. But I can say like, look, I felt like betrayed and I felt hurt by these actions because of this.
Right.
And kind of like, make it about myself and be, authentic about my feelings as opposed to like trying to project any type of like negativity onto him.
Right.
And I thought that was helpful. And I don't know, I felt like that was like part of my point, but I felt there was a point that I was also gonna, like a connection to the purity piece that I was gonna make with that, but.
You'll circle it back
yeah.
around.
Mm-hmm.
You'll work over it.
So the practices at the end that she suggests, I thought were really intriguing.
Yeah.
Especially the eat an orange, an hour to eat an orange. I thought that, some of the things she suggests in some of the end of the chapters, I was like, okay, but that seemed like something that I'm like, I can do that. I can sit down and like give that a shot and see what that's like.
I highly recommend the orange thing because an orange for me, I love eating an orange slowly and mindfully, and the practice of like peeling the skin and eating each little piece of pulp and feeling like the little, whatever that little package is. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And when you try to practice eating this orange and taking however long it takes for you to eat an orange, also play with the rind. You know, like when you twist it and see like the little spritz of the juice that comes out of it. I mean, play with the whole thing, not just the food on the inside.
I did like, although it sounded like the hardest one, even though it seems like the simplest, is week 3. Just this week, eat purely with yourself. Leave yourself alone, journal the experience. It's just like, wow, that sounds so simple, but that has to be, I don't know, it has to be the hardest one, because I just feel like, yeah, I could sit down and eat an orange for an hour, like, yeah, you know, that's easy, but just, I mean, just be with yourself for a week. I mean, isn't that all like what we're trying to do? Like, just kind of leave ourselves alone and be purely yourself. Like, isn't that what we're all trying to do in our lives? And I feel like if I could do that, then I don't know, I wouldn't have any issues. Like,
you wouldn't need yoga.
Right, exactly. I would just be perfect. No, not perfect, but you know what I mean. Just it would be complete easy. Like everything would be, I don't know. So I thought it was kind of funny. It just sounded so simple, and I think it's like the hardest one.
It really is, and I think that, you know, I like that she recommended to journal the experience. I mean, my God, I wrote my journal before I even came here. I mean, I write all the time, and but truly also the thing that she doesn't indicate in here that I really try to reinforce with people who are journaling is, if you're going to journal, the most important part is that you have to be honest with yourself. Because if you're journaling and you're just saying the words that you might say out loud to another human being, you may not be completely honest. But if you really get down to, so even for example with this, like being purely with yourself, like what the experience that you had, and then saying like, oh, I realized this thing about myself, like truly, and write down the words and see what it feels like to write those true words down. It's hard.
Because that is something that's given me anxiety, is not being open about something.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, I shouldn't feel that way. Right. Well, I mean, and that's why I said, that's why like lately I've been trying to not say that kind of stuff to myself. It's like, oh no, you're crazy for thinking that or feeling that way. Like you shouldn't do that. And then like I continue to think and feel that way, and then I feel crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, maybe if I just acknowledged it and was open about it, just accepted it, then maybe.
See, I think journaling gives you the practice to do that. Okay, because you can, you know, write it in this journal, whatever, and then you can say, oh, okay, you know, it almost like I can say this to other people. You know, I've said it to myself. I can say this to other people. You know, so it kind of paves the way. I mean, I'll be honest and say that I don't journal that much. I wish I journal more. You know, it's just one of them sounds stupid, but one of my like barriers to journaling is I have horrible handwriting. I never like practiced that at all. I had this theory when I was in high school that there would be devices that I could just talk to and like.
Oh,
you know,
yeah?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they came true?
So, and then actually for a while after, you know, I do have like an electronic journal, okay? Like it's called this app called Day One, right? And for a while there when I was like in the depths of my like, you know, right after she said, you know, we're done kind of thing, I was journaling and I was talking, you know, and it would like put it into text and I had to go back and like edit things whatever, because it was like, that's not what I said. But yeah, I'm thinking now, man, I need to get back into journaling more. So.
Well, and I think it's interesting though, because when we actually did the the weeks of journaling in here, everybody seemed to have a different style of journaling. Some people wrote it and then never looked back. Some people wrote it and destroyed it.
That's what my therapist suggested to me. It was like, write down all that anger, and then you don't necessarily want to be reminded about it. Like,
you're just getting it out.
Yeah. So and then she's like, and then destroy it. So that way it's just like
so
she talks about that.
So your bad handwriting could be irrelevant. You're just writing it down. Is my point. Yeah. So like your bad handwriting.
That's absolutely right.
So or even.
What am I worried about?
Yeah.
Well, actually that does make sense, because again, my therapist had talked about specifically for this instance, like, you have all that anger, and so you want to get it out, but like, don't even reread it, don't worry about spelling or anything. Yeah. And so you can't reread it if you can't read your handwriting, right?
Yeah, and even your verbal one, like saying that you're going back and cleaning it up after you've dictated it. Like why screw that. Yeah, just don't. Like the fact that you even just put it out of your body.
But it just is those interesting. It's like just another little barrier that, I don't know, you weren't being purely with yourself. And it's not like you were doing it on purpose. It was just like another little thing. I noticed I have a little app that a couple times a day it asks me like, how are you feeling today? And it's like 1 through 5 essentially, and it has little smiley faces. And so I was always putting like good, or the middle one is meh. And I noticed like I was always floating between like good and meh. And at some point I'm like, no, like so many of these like 3s, like I'm actually like 2s or 1s. And I was like, I'm actually being disingenuous to myself. Yeah. So I have started like putting like the lower 1s, and now of course like my average ratings are like lower, but it's like, I don't think that they're actually that much lower, because I've been doing it for a year and a half.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're actually that much lower. I think that I'm just actually being more honest with myself.
Yeah. Cause I mean, and I'm interested behind that. Like, were you trying to win? Like, you're like, oh, if I have a better rating, then that must mean that it's better.
It was like, I don't know. It was like I didn't want myself or other people to think of me like, oh, he's just, he's in a bad mood all this time. I was like, I don't even look at these anymore. Like, I could if I wanted to, and I do occasionally go look at like the month, and it kind of gives you like ups and downs. But I don't do that. But it's there if I need it. I don't know. But I'm just. But just by kind of lying.
Why were you trying to capture this information?
I mean, it's kind of like journaling, but in just like a very small sense. Like pretty much at noon and 8 o'clock every day, it just says, "How are you feeling?" And then it has like a grid of like, "What activity are you doing?" And then there's just like a little note field. So sometimes I put like a little, like not even one sentence, just like drinks with friend or something. And that's all I said. So it's kind of like a journaling, but I'm not sitting down for 15 minutes and writing.
It's momentary. It's like right now I am.
And that was something that I realized a year and a half ago, is that was a barrier for me, was that I'm like, oh, it's going to take me 20 minutes to do that, so I'm not going to do it. But when I just have this thing pop up, I can just go, oh, I can do it. Even that, I push it off for a couple hours sometimes.
Yeah.
But do you go? I mean, so you do it, and you can rate it at the moment, but do you go back then and like kind of say, you know what? Here's my whatever, the way things are going. You know what? That makes sense because this happened on this date.
Well,
You're not trying to correlate things or anything like that. Or?
It's more like, I mean, you can, and for me, it's more like I just kind of look at like my months. And so like what I was saying was I looked at like my monthly averages or whatever, and my monthly averages the past like few months have been lower. And it's actually, I think, because I've been being more honest, even though I think that like this time last year or 18 months ago, I was even in an even worse place than I am, like even just sitting here right now. But my ratings were higher, and it was like, I think I was just lying. Essentially lying to my phone, lying to myself, and nobody else ever sees this. Like literally I've never showed anybody this before. I've told some people about it, but like
Facebook knows.
Right, who knows?
I don't log in with my Facebook yet. But, no,
right, very smart.
But that doesn't mean that they don't have it. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. So it was just like,
that's an interesting
lying to
app.
myself.
Yeah.
It was.
What's that app called?
It's called Daylio, Daylio.
Like, what's the dealio?
Yes, yeah, and like I said, I just like the little faces are kind of funny.
I like it.
Yeah, no, I do like it. I wish it was more than twice a day, but you have to pay for it if it's more than twice.
Oh.
But I'm like, I picked noon and 8.
Suppose you could probably do it on your own. Just saying.
That's a whole other barrier, Bird. I wouldn't do it.
You can put little alerts on your phone. Anyway, I'm sure you know what you could do.
It gives me a little like, yay, like I'm up to like 500 days in a row. So I'm like, yay, you've done it for 500 days in a row. And if I missed a day, I would be like crushed. Because I'm at like 500, so I'd be so sad if I missed one.
Yeah, seriously.
And then the next day, I'd have to put sad.
Why? Because
Lost
I
my
missed
streak.
yesterday.
I know.
Had to start all over again.
So what do you think about the clutter stuff she talks about? And,
Yeah.
and doing that kind of purification.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, but not even just physical clutter. So obviously, yes, having your junk, your stuff, physical stuff, a clean house is a clean mind, that whole thing, absolutely 100%. But I think even going back to some of what we've been talking about, like emotional clutter, thoughts, I think that if you completely, processing, that's clutter. Continuing to think about the same thing over and over and over again. What I could have said, what I could have done. Stop it.
I never do.
No.
I do it all the time.
No, I think that, I can't speak for any other culture, any other country. We have a lot of stuff here in America. We have a lot of stuff, not just physical stuff. We have a lot of food. We do have a lot of things, but we also have, the idea of tasking. Yeah. And I actually listened to a guy, I don't know if I've said this before. We had a guy that came into our company and talked about it, and he said it's not actually multitasking, it's multi-phasing. Because you can't actually do two things at the same time. You're stopping and starting and stopping and starting. But we have this culture of you must constantly be doing something or else you must be lazy.
Yeah.
So, even the clutter of the stuff that we fill our day with, and then all of a sudden feel bad when we've got an hour, we're like, I don't have anything to do. I must be forgetting something. I must be lazy. I must be a terrible person.
So I wonder if that concept of like, I'm always going to be doing something, okay, I always have to fill my time, then is why then it gets translated into physical manifestation in all the stuff in our house. You know what I mean? It's like, so I've got space there, I've got to have something in it. I've got a blank wall, I've got to add some, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder what kind of like connection there is, between that, because it's just like we have these women, we fill them up.
Right.
So
I know for me, like when I'm upset, I like to be busy because I don't like the negative thoughts that are in my head. So I like to be busy. So I am essentially distracted from those things. And so for me, like having stuff is like, it is kind of like you're I don't know, can't say it. Like you are like avoiding like that blankness, that blank wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. I can't.
Well, it's like even filling silence with words or music.
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just be sitting in silence or whatever. So
Yeah. But why?
because we're just not used to it. We have so much stimulation going on all the time that it's just like
Right. Or you're avoiding your thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's
you're
what
avoiding
I
your thoughts,
do.
yeah.
I really enjoy talking with people, and even right now, that little pause, I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? And I freak out a little bit. And it's, I enjoy talking with people, and I don't always like my negative thoughts. So it's, I always kind of break the silence because it is uncomfortable.
But then what happened, and I'm not trying to shrink you here, but then the general question is, so then what happens to the negative thoughts that you're trying to distract yourself from? Where do they go? Do they dissolve? It's kind of a rhetorical question.
Of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So that's the thing. Like, you buy more things in your home. Now you've just piled stuff on top. So it's like it's the physical manifestation of you distracting your thoughts is you're bringing in more dishes instead of just cleaning your dishes.
It's like something else to distract yourself with, whether it's visually or physically.
Just pile it on.
Yeah. I'm not sure how this fits into the whole sketch, but so like immediate, when I was like in the dark place, whatever, I had this like all this anxious energy, right? And because I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? What do I do now? And so I just started like, organizing all this stuff in my house, and like just cleaned out my closet and like got rid of clothes that I, hadn't worn or wasn't going to wear and all this kind of stuff. And like lined up my shirts by color and all this kind of, it was just like, I was like, man, I could really like, get some stuff done around here with this energy,
right,
kind of thing. But I needed it. I needed, like getting back to, I guess, the conversation is like, I was avoiding thinking about this mess or whatever, but I needed some kind of distraction. I needed something to like do with my hands and do, because like I said, I had this like, this energy.
I would also argue that was something that you could control that.
Right.
This other thing you couldn't control.
Right. It was me helping. I could like exercise some control over the situation.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait,
Well, I think even in that case, like when I do something like that, when I do try to like distract myself, when I'm feeling blue, it's like I'm trying to like reach out to people to talk to somebody, like, I haven't talked to this person in a while, so I'm going to try to build this relationship or, reconnect. And so I try to do something that's constructive. So even if it's like, I'm still just distracting myself, like I'm doing something constructive. I try not to like watch just like too much TV or something. Like I'm going to clean out my entire closets, which I just did a couple months ago. But it's like I got rid of like half my crap that was in there, and it's better organized now. And so now it's not, even though I was distracting myself, it was something that was still, I don't know, useful.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was still really wasn't a waste of time. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, this is awesome, that
yeah.
part of it. But yeah, there definitely was a sense of like, I needed something I could like, it's weird, I guess, but something I could control, something I could like, exercise some, whatever.
And I think early on or something like that, like when it is really intense and it's like you're not sure that you can handle how intense like the emotion is,
right.
Then I think it's, well, no, I've been told by therapists, like it's okay to not to kind of distract yourself or something that is so intense, but you can't reject it forever.
Right.
And that's what I was saying with like,
I only have so many closets, so.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like just circle back through every day.
Go down the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I do notice that when I talk with people, like somebody I'm just meeting, or I know it's on like dates or something, like a first or second date, like I just that silence, that's bad. So I put into it. And it's not anything that I'm like, that's not this like huge negative thing. It's more just like the silence comes and it's like, oh no, we're not talking about anything. Oh, it's going so poorly. And it's like, no, we just talked for like an hour and a half straight and everything was going great.
Yeah.
But now that we didn't talk for the past 5 seconds. And then that's essentially why I start talking, was because I start then thinking how poorly this date's going, even though I know that it actually went really well for the past hour and a half.
Well, and honestly, the one thing that I see as a sign of good relationships for me is being comfortable being silent together. Like Aaron and I will spend days not talking to each other because we're just like, we're reading, we're doing stuff, and it's just like, and that's okay. But then again, we've also been together for 15 years. However, I think that that's an okay sign if you're comfortable being silent together.
Not on a first date.
I don't know, but why not?
No,
That could be the most amazing thing.
I understand. That's
or the whole damn date's silent. This is so perfect.
It would be an interesting date to be like, all right, you're going to go and you're going to meet with this person and you're just going to sit there in silence for an hour. not say
Ooh,
anything.
that's an interesting
Actually,
challenge.
there is something like that where it was like people, like, it was, I don't know if it was like speed dating, but it was like you're going to sit and you're just going to stare at the other person's eyes for like 2 minutes. Or, like a period of time that wasn't
challenge.
Long. Well, right.
That
but
you
it was.
usually end up kissing.
Okay, fine. But yeah, no, but it's kind of like that idea. It's like you sit in silence, you don't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think
else
that
I'm working on.
you're able to see people more then. If you're not filling this whole conversation, this whole interaction with words that just sort of like get pasted up on this mirror or this piece of glass in front of you, like then I actually get to spend time and notice you and notice your person. And
I also just like talking and interacting with people.
Sure.
So it's also something else that I don't know.
Yeah.
Just still trying to navigate.
Yeah. It's a life thing.
Ugh.
Yeah, we'll never be perfect.
Yeah, I think the silence thing is especially, I read some stuff recently, appropriate for like when you're with somebody who's suffered a loss, a family member or whatever, I've always struggled with like, okay,
What do you say?
right? And sometimes it's just better just
To be with
be
them.
with them and be silent, just read various little tidbits and stories here and there where people have just having that person there, not saying anything, maybe they made some tea or whatever, but just having them there.
Yeah.
And we need to.
And don't say it'll be all right. That's the worst. Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't wish you more than you gave.
But,
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah.
but that is something that I have been trying to do though, is like just, I want to say something, should I say that? It's like, well, if you have to question it, then probably just don't say it.
Yeah.
And then just be silent. I've been trying to do that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. As you heard, we got into some really deep and important discussions there. Real life things, and that's what yoga is about, is learning how to apply the yamas, the niyamas, and any of the other yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, once we get to those in later discussions, learning how to apply these to real life situations. I think a lot of times we're sitting in a yoga class, we're learning these things, and maybe it's hard to determine, how does this apply on my day-to-day life? And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish here with these discussions. These are very important. So I really appreciate when we have these discussions, when people are open about the things going on in their lives. I think that helps the person who is sharing the story. It also helps you, the listener. Discussions help everyone. Conversations help everyone. So again, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any comments or questions, suggestions, and so forth, please leave them in the comment box. However you're digesting this information or this discussion, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, wherever it is, please leave a comment. And I will respond, and maybe we'll actually, bring it in as part of the conversation for next time. Again, if you're in the neighborhood, stop by Wednesdays, 7:30 p.m. at the Yoga Happiness Studio in Columbus, Ohio. Next week, we are discussing Saucha, contentment. This is the second of the Niyamas. And again, we'll see how long it takes for us to discuss it. If it goes past that one evening discussion, then we'll hop into the next day. Or to the following Wednesday. So please do show your support, like this or subscribe or whatever. However you're ingesting this, please show your support. Patreon.com/yoga happiness. I'd love to have your support there as well. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope to see you in class. Thank you, everyone.